Tonight on Business Live, analysts project economy to grow at a rate of about 1.5% higher than projected 0.9% following reopening of the Kotoka International Airport. We will hear from economist Professor Peter Quartey. Telecoms giant MTN warns its growth would be impacted negatively should the NCA dilute its market position. Ahead, we monitor reactions on the stock market. Hundreds out of work. Tonight on the Joy Business Van, we visit a hub for bookbinding hit by COVID-19 restrictions. I'm Israeli details after this break. A revised law promulgated by the Energy Commission will give it power to take legal action against any shipping line that accepts inefficient refrigerators and electrical appliances that are substandard. This is a move by the Commission to rid the market of such products which are energy inefficient. Here's Emedeza Sabute's report.
The Energy Commission is seeking to review the law prohibiting the importation of second-hand and substandard electrical equipment, especially refrigerators, into the country. The new law is aimed at making the country move from the current 5 stars being the most efficient to 7 stars. At the stakeholders' engagement with some traders as well as port and shipping line owners, Head of Energy Efficiency and Climate Change at the Energy Commission, Kofi Jako, hinted that shipping lines are part of the process to ensure that such products do not enter the country.
We have chosen to go by the seizures. But thanks for asking. In fact, as a prelude to the coming into effect of this new law, we are going to test that one and see how it comes up. Ever since
you are going to start prosecuting.
Exactly. Ever since this law came into enforcement, and in 2013, 1st July, we have not tested the law. This time around, we want to test it as a prelude to coming into effect of the revised one, because the revised one should a shipping line decide not to comply, will have to resort to the court. So we want to test it for now and see how it comes out.
Executive Secretary of the Ghana Ship Owners and Agents Association, Perpetual Osei-Bonsu, on her part, asked for more engagement on the law to ensure smooth enforcement.
We want to introduce some changes, so we have to get back and with Energy Commission look at the roles, their proposals, how it fits into our businesses, and then we'll see how we can cooperate, because like you said, there's been collaboration between us since the first legislation came into force, and I don't see why it should change. But then all the changes they want to implement must be discussed and see we come to an understanding as to the way forward.
Ghana could be making huge savings in power when the law takes effect.
The National Communications Authority will in the coming weeks implement new regulations aimed at checking MTN's market dominance. This was after an Accra High Court shut down a judicial review request by MTN on its market dominance tag. George Jaffe has the rest of the story.
A court presided over by Justice J.R. Siedu argued that the review was dismissed because there was sufficient evidence that the necessary consultation was done by the regulator before the action was taken. The court also argued that the National Communications Authority did not act contrary to the law when he declared MTN as a dominant player in the telecom space. The judge, however, maintained that MTN still has an opportunity to engage the National Communications Authority on these regulations and how it should be implemented. MTN, on the other hand, per the application, was seeking to challenge the move by the regulator after he was declared as a dominant player because he has more than 40% stake in all markets that he operates. In the court application secured by Joy Business, MTN was of the view that the declaration by the National Communications Authority was done in breach of their right to be heard in violation of procedure of fairness. But the National Communications Authority, on the other hand, maintained that there had been significant engagement with MTN on this issue since 2016. Unless MTN is able to fast-track the process to halt the implementation of this ruling by appealing, then the National Communications Authority can go ahead and take actions to check the MTN's monopoly tag. This, analysts say, could negatively affect some service offerings by the telecoms giant. The telecoms operator itself, on the other hand, says going ahead with this move could seriously affect some critical services that it offers to the public as well as its profits. Joy Business understands that the National Communications Authority is in the process of finalizing these regulations that is expected to be implemented very soon. Some industry analysts have also argued that going ahead to implement this move by the regulator may affect future investments into the telecom space.
Meanwhile, telecoms giant MTN is warning that moves by the regulator will seriously impact on its growth. It argues that it will also affect its performance, innovation, and competitiveness in the telecoms market. These concerns were captured in the telecom giant half-year performance statement for this year as it sought to outline several scenarios on how the enforcement of the move will affect its operations. Stock market watcher Bertha Atuiga joins us for a conversation. Hello, Bertha. How are investors reacting to this? Any signs on the stock market? All right, Bertha, if you could unmute.
Can you hear me now?
All right, yes, I can hear you. So I'm asking, have there been, are you seeing any reactions on the stock market yet?
Well, lately, I would say no, because we haven't seen the millions of shares that we usually see trading in MTN on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And I would say this is the case because the Ghana Stock Exchange is not as efficient as other markets that respond swiftly to information like what we see right now with the National Communications Authority. So if the Ghana Stock Exchange were to be an efficient market like the London Stock Exchange, then we could have seen a significant impact on the price of the equity and even its movement and even volumes on the stock market. But that is not the case on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
But do you see that happening at all? Probably, if not immediately, maybe in a couple of weeks or months?
Well, it's been the trend on the stock market. You know, the MTN Ghana is one of the equities that is contributing significantly to the worth of the Ghana Stock Exchange, if I'll put it that way. Because if you look at MTN's current market capitalization, which is 7.25 billion Ghana cedis, you can say it is a high market cap equity. And it's been trading significant volumes of shares on the stock market in the past, let's say for the last 1 month, it's been one of the most traded equity on the stock market. And from beginning of the year till now, it's traded over 340 million shares on the stock market, and that is the highest. So going forward, we could see some trades taking place, some huge volumes taking place in MTN on the stock market, but it's not going to have a significant impact regarding its performance on the exchange.
All right, thank you very much, Bertha Atuiga, bringing us an update from the stock market there. And moving on, analysts are projecting a slight improvement in Ghana's economic growth with the reopening of the Quartey International Airport to international flights and arrivals. According to economist Professor Peter Quartey, growth could grow beyond the 0.9% projected by the government to about 1.5% of gross domestic product for this year. He cites the hospitality subsector, particularly conferences, hotels, and conferences, and as the biggest beneficiaries. He joins us via Zoom to expand on this. Thank you very much, Professor Peter Quartey. So explain to us why you're so optimistic. All right, if you could please unmute.
Right.
Yes.
Good evening to you, Israel, and good evening to your discerning
Good evening,
viewers.
Prof.
Yes, I'm being cautiously optimistic about this because we need to respect the health protocols as we open the airport. But if we do, then I think a lot of businesses would be stimulated. We would get a lot of imports and exports through the airport, which brings in revenue. And once we get revenue, certainly it's going to boost government activities. We also see the hospitality industry, tourism, and the restaurants, the hotels, being in business. They employ people, they engage in the economic activity. That certainly is going to affect the other subsectors. Agriculture, for instance, when hotels are operating, when the restaurants are operating, agriculture production will certainly have some demand. So it's just certainly going to affect all the other key sectors: industry, electricity, water, and so on and so forth. So we're likely going to see an increase in aggregate demand, and the respective supply responses would also kick in, and certainly that is likely to affect our GDP positively. So again, I am cautiously optimistic that we may hit our 1.5% GDP growth rate instead of the 0.9% initially projected.
All right, so I am looking at it, I'd want us to look at it this way. Government is projecting 0.9%. Don't you think that government may have factored in the reopening of the airport into its 0.9% projection?
Yes, but I'm not sure government really plan to open at this time. It is the numbers that inform the decision. So at the time the projection was made, I'm not too sure that they knew for certain that they were going to open the airport at this point. But what I'm saying is there are multiplier effects. Once you open and you manage the pandemic very well, you manage the spread very well, you may have modest projections, but we are likely to have some multiplier effects which might be bigger than you initially anticipated.
And then again, if you're looking at you talk about tourism and the fact that we're going to have people coming in and the hospitality sector is likely to benefit. But if you're looking at tourism doesn't look like it's going to go, it's going to be on the uptick with the opening of the airport. Because generally across the world, people are not that keen on traveling as of now. So I'm not so sure how that is going to improve our tourist numbers.
There are certainly some who come in for business, and it's not just business, there's leisure. So as they work and earn money, they would like to tour parts of the country. So certainly tourism would pick up. Yes, initially, as you open, you will not find a lot of huge inflows, people moving for tourism, etc. But over time, when they are sure that safety is really assured, then you see the numbers picking up. If you look across Europe and many other places, there is still an increase in tourism, although not to the level that one would have anticipated around this time of the year. But gradually, I think tourism would also pick up, and other sectors as well. As we gradually open the economy, we open part of the country, education and many other places, as we gradually open. And I believe a lot of these things will kick in, and our GDP is likely to improve on condition that we respect the protocols and it doesn't lead to a surge in the cases.
All right, and I also want you to look into the crystal ball and tell us what does next year look like? Well,
again, being cautiously optimistic, I think next year might look slightly better than this year, provided we don't see any new pandemic or anything coming in. We are likely to gradually come out of the recession, and then we see the economy moving back to its normal position. It might take a while, but I'm sure we'll gradually get there. But also it depends on the extent to which we manage our budget deficit. Election years have been quite problematic, and this year being an election year with also COVID-related expenditure, if we don't overspend or we don't have such a huge budget deficit, that will leave us to clean the mess in the next 3 or so years, then we are likely to see better prospects next year.
Now, since you brought in the factor or the election year factor, I'd like to ask, did you factor that into your cautious optimism of the growth going up from 0.9% to 1.5%? Because generally in election years, people are indecisive and investors would like to hold on and see how the election goes before they come in to invest.
Yeah, but also you will note that during election years, people spend. Political parties spend on campaign, they spend on T-shirts. Money changes hands during election year. So it's certainly going to stimulate aggregate demand. So yes, some investors might be cautious, but consumption would also increase. And all of this factor into our GDP calculation.
All right. I like to put it this way, that yes, investors may be cautious, but the politicians may not be so cautious in spending and making sure they win the election.
Exactly. That's the point.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Peter Quartey. And moving on, cocoa farmers in parts of the Ashanti region have hailed a new initiative by Solidaridad West Africa to help them access financing to support their farms. Under the initiative, farmers are connected to a local bank for loans to buy input in time for the farming season. In the following report, my colleague Justice Beidou finds out how this could help boost productivity on cocoa farms.
Alco Monte is one of the hundreds of cocoa farmers in Wioso, a small community in the Ashanti region. Despite the high levels of foreign exchange that cocoa-producing nations like Ghana earn from the sale of the product, the people behind the production of the crop work and live in abject poverty.
Now,
part of the problem is financial illiteracy. Sometimes it's not really because farmers do not have the money. It is how to manage what they have in order to attract investment from financial institutions.
Mostly they complain about the time that they always need funds. There is not always available to them. And then like farm input to accessing farm input too.
And so part of the solutions the villagers here pioneered for themselves is this savings and loans group. This program is part of an access to finance project led by civil society group Solidaridad West Africa.
Last year, we gave 20 million. We got a motor 19 million. I see what is here, monopa. Your mom to go so regularly. Now, a boy me pa. Yama manager who said this year so. Person I give now manya inputs kakran so tan dia support.
Fidie we no. Yene Solidaridad for a day juma na yenya busan wo mu ho ye de toy. Yenya nkofa entoy no ye bre e wo abobo ya no ho. Ya nkasa mpodi ye bre nkasa. Anso ene no se mi ko family load na fidie no si ho na ma sesa me load no ayeden egum.
Justice Beidou, JoyNews, we also in the Ashanti region.
President Akufo-Addo over the weekend announced a partial reopening of schools, meaning selected students are allowed to return to school to complete their academic year. It's not the kind of good news bookbinders were expecting. Most of them have been out of business since the schools temporarily shut down, and hundreds of their staff who haven't already lost their jobs could be unemployed as a result. Today, the Joy Businessman takes you to one of the popular hubs for bookbinders in Accra, where work is at a standstill.
Bubuashi, a suburb of Accra. On a normal day, this part of town bustles with activity. It's one of the major hubs for bookbinders. We have come to meet Nana Kweku Ntibuesiako. He is chairman of the Bookbinders Association. He has been in the business for about 30 years, since the 80s.
Those times was the best times. White man would say the good old days. From 85 where I started mine, we were about 5 And then now we can boast of about 2,000 people as we speak now.
Every street has a bookbinding factory, and chances are that every home you see belongs to a factory owner or a worker.
Before this COVID-19 will hit us, we do the production. We have orders from the schools and then from the open market as well. Some supply Kumasi as far as Tamale, and some to supply. The major ones supply at Okanshin, where we have the major stores that takes our books, and then Kofodia. Let's across the country, the length and breadth of the country. We do supply everywhere.
But COVID-19 has changed everything. Various factory owners are in a meeting today to discuss the way forward, weeks after the president closed down schools temporarily to curb the spread of the virus.
We work hand in hand with GES. So any measure that GES will take, it goes against production of books, notebooks, and all that entails to a school, to give it to a school, it definitely affects them. So now that the COVID-19 has come to stay for some few months that we are fighting, battling it out, it has let the business gone down because we can't manufacture.
The pandemic came at a very bad time, Nana Kweku tells me. The month of May is usually when production is at its peak. Now there's nothing to do, nobody to produce for.
If you manufacture now, why are you going to sell it? Before this thing happened, we have already done a lot of books to the market where we haven't gotten our money. So even to raise capital to buy material to start business now is a big problem for us now. That's what we are thinking of. How to even get money to start the business when this epidemic is over. Even where to get the money to start afresh is the problem. Because when you go to the market, they will tell you haven't sell your books. So you can't even go, if you go for them, what are you going to do with it? So definitely it means you have to get new money to start another production. So as we speak, the effect is very huge.
Most of the factories have been shut for weeks and equipment already gathering dust. Besides the huge investments they've made in equipment, their other headache is to pay hundreds of workers they have employed.
They are the boys we normally work with every year. So we save money to keep them going. Because this thing is, let's say, by a month or two, it will be over. So assuming you don't pay them and then you let them go, when it's over, who is going to help you? So we don't pay them fully, but at least we give them something to keep them also going. Because they know what is going on now. We are not manufacturing, we are not selling. But at least we have to help ourselves. We meet ourselves halfway. So that's what we have been doing. We have been helping them halfway, just to keep them going till the pandemic is over. So for now, we don't pay full salary to them. We are meeting them halfway, just for them to survive.
For how long this can be sustained, Nana Kweku can't tell. What is obvious, they need support to survive this period.
We've heard that they brought in some measures that they are going to help the small-scale industries. I heard it on a radio and then on a TV, and they are yet to launch it. So that's what we are also praying that will be factored into it, that if there's any helping hand, they should also turn back and see those who work with the schools. Because other factories are, since the lockdown has been lifted, other factories are working. But since we work with the school direct, we cannot work because schools are not open. So when you do the books, where are you going to sell it? So if financial support will come, we are begging the government to also put us into consideration and see how we are going to be able to stand on our feet again, because now we are down.
Now though, with nothing much to do, the bookbinders are meeting to strategize the way forward.
The whole thing is a nightmare, I must be honest, a nightmare. So we are pleading to the government that if you come into our aid, when this small-scale loan is being introduced, they should also turn back to us and help us more, at least to cushion us, so we can stand on our feet. If nothing comes at all, it will be very difficult for us to work. Because I can tell you for a fact, somebody capital is 1,000 Ghana, somebody has 2,000 Ghana. The person has been in the house for 2 months now. You can imagine what has become of that money. It's gone. So you need something to start again. So it's like we are really down.
Down as long as the schools are closed.
Well, kudos to Nana Kweku and all the bookbinders out there trying to help their workers to survive. But the critical question to ask, though, is will the printing industry ever be the same again? Considering the rate at which most people are adopting virtual events, the numerous virtual meetings being held now means there wouldn't be the need for that much stationery. Again, with more schools holding virtual classes and acquiring computers, will there be the need for that many textbooks or exercise books? I believe it's about time those in the stationery business started reinventing themselves. On that note, we're bringing down the curtain on Business Live. I'm Israel Lai. Good evening.